Okay, this podcast looks at the question: describe the work of Stresemann in helping Germany to recover in the years 1924 to 29. It's a 9-mark question, and it therefore would require 13 minutes to answer it. As always, with these questions, remember you need to paragraph. So you need to think through a plan, an appropriate plan. It's a fairly straightforward question. It's not asking you really to analyse, it's simply asking you to describe the work of Stresemann in the period 1924 to 29. So it's obviously the golden era. It's the era when the Nazi Party were not really a major issue. It's the period of recovery after the hyperinflation of 1923. Okay, so let's take a look at the different answers and how you would structure the best answer. First of all, a simple statement. It would only score at most 3 marks. As you can see, there is some relevant information here. The candidate understands that Stresemann was a German leader, so we'll get credited for that. He understands that this candidate, he or she can link Stresemann to German recovery. The fact a new currency was introduced by Stresemann, and also mentions the Locarno Treaty. So there's some relevant information in there, but it's a very, very slim answer for 13 minutes, so it really wouldn't get more than 3 marks. Now the next answer, as you can see, is far more substantial. You just read through that, packed with information. So knows that he was Foreign Secretary. That's better than just saying German leader. So it knows his position. Knows that he died in October 1929. Comments on the Rentenmark and describes what the Rentenmark was. So stabilising the currency after the inflation of 1923. Talks about the Dawes Plan. Gives figures. So you've got the amounts. So lots of really good information there about the plan. Locarno Treaty, League of Nations, Kellogg-Briand Pact, Nobel Peace Prize in 1926. So you read that and you would think, well, that's clearly a really strong answer. Actually, that probably would score a grade B. Packed with precise information. If you look at the criteria for level 2, it is certainly developed. It is certainly supported with accurate and relevant material. However, what it isn't structured. It isn't structured in a clear way to highlight his major achievements. It's very much of a sort of scattergun approach. Just the candidate hasn't really planned beforehand, has just shoved lots of information down in the time that he or she has got to write that answer. So we'll take a look now at the best answer. Here we go. So this is a level 3 response. Immediately you can see that it is paragraphed. So you've got a clear introduction that sets the context. It says who Stresemann was. He was Foreign Secretary. It points out the dates from November 1923 until October 1929, and this was the period in which Germany recovered economically, and sums up that historians give Stresemann much of the credit for that recovery. Remember, the important thing with an introduction is whatever topic you're given to talk about, put it in context, explain what happened before and how it fits into the big picture. You don't need to spend more than a couple of minutes on an introduction. As you can see, that introduction is 3 very brief sentences. You should be able to write that probably in a minute, to be quite honest. You then read the rest of the answer, and remember the key thing is are those important topic sentences where the key point is made. That's the key thing. If you've got time to develop it with extra information, then use that time, but the key thing is are the sentences in bold. and you can immediately see that the candidate is helping him or herself by flagging up what the paragraph is about and showing how it is relevant to the question. So the way in which those sentences are written. So Stresemann's first major contribution was. Stresemann's second contribution was. Stresemann also had considerable success. The point here is, as an examiner will quickly scan those opening sentences and see, this is clearly focused on several different contributions. And then what then happens is each paragraph develops what the contribution was. So that first major paragraph, Stresemann's first major contribution, is clearly about sorting out the problem of the hyperinflation. Okay, so it's got the same detail that was in the level 2 answer that we just looked at. In fact, the detail is not as good, but it is very well structured. So it talks about the temporary currency, it talks about the rent, which is, of course is the rent and mark, and about being backed with gold and effectively stabilising the prices, and inflation was brought back under control, a major contribution. Then Stresemann's second contribution, looking at that paragraph, was the Dawes plan. So really pushed the issue of the Dawes plan. So there you've got the figures, so clearly precise, relevant information. So bring all of that in. See at the end, very much worth pointing out, it's a good point, certainly to get A star, that although the Dawes plan really made Stresemann popular with many German people because it helped bring about economic recovery, there were right-wing groups that criticised Stresemann for signing the Dawes plan because it was like re-signing the Treaty of Versailles again. It was readmitting that Germany had caused the war. Any deal made with the Americans was seen to be admitting war guilt yet again. And then the next paragraph is foreign policy. Okay, so you think to yourself, 3 major contributions. The first contribution was sorting out inflation, hyperinflation. The second major contribution was the Dawes plan. The third major contribution was foreign policy. So explain the point. The key word is fulfilment. Nice word to use that in your answer. What fulfilment means is he chose to cooperate with Britain and France. He said, look, we can't keep resisting Britain and France. We've got to accept the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, and then they will treat us better in return, which they did. So as a result of that, Germany was part of international agreements, and the key ones to mention are the Locarno treaties of 1925, bringing the detail, Germany being allowed to join the League of Nations, and again with detail, and the Kellogg-Briand Pact of 1928. So those are the 3 foreign policy terms that you need to bring into your answer. And then finally, at the end, you've got the conclusion. So pull it all together. His significant contribution was towards international cooperation and economic recovery. Nice point to bring in here that he tragically died very early at the age of 50 in October 1929, which was 3 weeks before the Wall Street crash and the beginning of the Great Depression. And that's provoked debate amongst historians that if Stresemann had not died, then possibly history may have gone a different way. He was probably the only true great statesman of the Weimar era, and it was a great loss to Germany that they lost that very able politician in 1929, possibly somebody who could have prevented the rise to power of Hitler after 1929. Okay, so that's a model answer to that question. I hope that was useful to you.